chairperson of the Doylestown Borough Human Relations Commission. The commission has anywhere between 7 and 15 members on it now. I think we're currently at about 9. The HRC, Human Relations Commission, is focused on the borough of Doylestown. There are other human relations commissions or local HRCs, such as the Bucks County, the Newtown County Human Relations Commission, and several others. And then there's also the state of Pennsylvania has its own Human Relations Commission, which has a greater degree of formal enforcement powers and hearing rights and procedures and that kind of thing. So the purpose of a commission like ours in a local setting is to provide an opportunity for community members to bring up any issues they may have locally with people from the community if anything happens that you feel was an instance of discrimination or harassment based on things like religion, race, gender orientation, or sexual orientation, and so forth. So we are available to negotiate or mediate disputes if they come up, although we haven't really seen any of those in any great number, to say the least. We also look at ways of promoting the policy of the Human Relations Commission, which is really to promote a atmosphere and community in the borough of Doylestown that is welcoming to all people, accepting, and where people feel like they can come here or live here without fear of discrimination or harassment of any kind. So we've done a series of presentations, of community presentations and forums. The first one we did back in, I think, the summer of 2024, focused on bullying in the community. We had a panel of people speak to the topic of bullying from different aspects and different professional avenues. There's a psychologist, a lawyer, an educator, and so forth. So that was well attended and I thought well received. We then did a forum on immigration several months later, and that was also very well attended. I think we had standing room only that night. And again, with a panel of professionals and people who are active in the community on the immigration issue. And we had questions from the audience from both of those forums, which were themselves very informative and added to the, I think, to the benefit of the entire process for the night. So tonight, what we're doing is we are having a group of students from CB West High School present the first of three, on the first of three topics that we are addressing in community forums. The first one that you'll hear tonight addresses the history of immigration in a Fanny Chapman pool. The overall topic, as Chris will talk about in greater detail, is what is the history of integration in Doylestown Borough generally. So tonight the students have done research and they've prepared a audio-visual presentation for the audience to address the topic of the history of the Fanny Chapman pool. And as sure many of you know, swimming pools around the country were kind of a flashpoint in the era of discrimination and fighting for integration of communities. So the students tonight have done some great research and they're going to be talking to you about that. The next forum, which is not tonight, but will be the next one we schedule, will address elected officials in the borough of Doylestown. And finally, the history of Lyle Lane, which is a youth camp, and its founder, and how that was developed over the years. So with that, I'm going to hand over the microphone to Christopher Bakash, who is a Human Relations Commission member and who was the kind of creator of this whole idea reaching out to students and having them do research and then present on these topics. So, Chris?
Thank you, Fred. Well, this is a dream come true. I can't believe that we have 5 brilliant students standing here in the 4th marking period that have voluntarily done more academic research. So that's pretty remarkable. And very briefly, I want to tell you about where the motivation for this project came from. 4 years ago, my neighbor at the time, former council person Wendy Margolis, approached me and said, "Chris, would you run for borough council?" And I said, "Absolutely not. I'm not qualified for that." She says, "Well, what about if you joined a board?" I said, "Okay. There's the HRC board, and there's an opening right now." And I said, "What's an HRC board?" And she told me, just as Fred described, it's a board of people that's chiefly concerned with the equal treatment of people in the borough. And I said, "I bet all those people are really nice. I'll do that. I'll hang out with those people. That sounds great." Rewind 15 years. I'm a freshman in engineering school. And I'm interested in getting free housing the next year, so I apply to be an RA. And I go to my interview to be an RA, and they say, "Chris, tell me what you think and how you feel about social justice." Now, I was a 19-year-old engineering student. I was mostly concerned with my next math test. I had to be honest with them and say, "Guys, I really don't think about social justice too much." And I wish I had. I wish that I had had the opportunity to be brought into the fold of folks who are interested in the equal treatment of others. And I wish I had been thinking about that for a decade more of my life before I started to think about that a lot more. So when I found myself on the HRC board and an opportunity to grow our community a little bit, I thought, let's bring some wonderful young people into the fold. Let's give them an opportunity to think about the civil rights history of the community they live in, learn a little bit, and get some credentials out of it. So I'm very excited that we have these 5 wonderful students. We have Abby, Evie, Anika, Caitlin, and I'm not looking at the slide, it's Maya. We're so happy that you came here to do this for us. This is wonderful. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for everyone for coming. This is such an important part of our local history, and we are so excited to share this with everyone. Over the past couple months, we have worked super hard and we've learned so much from this. So thank you so much to the HRC for giving us this opportunity and for all of you guys for being here. So to do a little introduction, what was happening in the world during this time? 1958 was the year that the Fanny Chapman pool was officially desegregated. However, there was still a lot of racial tension going on in the world. To start off, one of the most prominent things was Brown versus the Board of Education. At this time, America and the South were caught in a struggle with racial segregation, and they just could not come to an end. In 1958, the Supreme Court mandated that all schools begin integrating. However, there was extreme resistance from some southern states, specifically Virginia and Arkansas. In these states, a lot of their major public schools in their largest cities were shut down out of complete refusal to integrate. They thought that it was better to just shut them down than to allow all students to go to school together. And another thing that was happening in the world during this time were a series of nonviolent protests. Because legal reform was so slow, people were turning to nonviolent protests as a way to get their voice out and communicate that what was happening in the world was unfair. A famous example of this was in Kansas at a drugstore sit-in. At this event, it was sponsored by the NAACP Youth Council, and activists sat at a lunch counter for three weeks straight, open to close every day until the owner finally agreed to allow Black patrons into the store. Something else that was happening in the world, obviously, a lot of legal battles, but specifically ones for things that shouldn't even be battled over. So during this time, interracial marriage was illegal. And a famous example of a couple that was arrested, Richard and Mildred Loving. They were arrested for being literally an interracial couple during this time in a famous case called Loving versus Virginia. And this case was the key case that sparked the nation to allow interracial couples, because being arrested for, loving who you love is not fair at all. So to zoom in a little bit more on what was happening in our community in Doylestown during this time, Leah Lane was a civil rights activist and educator right here from Doylestown, PA. She ran one of the first Black youth day camps for inner city youth in the Northeast. And these camps were a key factor in allowing Black inner city youth to get access to rural areas, something that was very difficult for them to get during this time. Another thing, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Levittown's housing situation. They were infamous for their cookie cutter houses with very affordable prices. And the first Black family to ever move into this neighborhood were the Myers family. And because they were Black, they were met with KKK violence and extreme harassment. However, they did not give up, because they knew that just being a Black family and wanting to just live where they want is not right. So because of this, they got help from the NAACP, other families, and the Quakers, and were able to move in and comfortably, as well help other families move in. So for this project, we were able to interview two absolutely wonderful women who are here today, Doreen Stratton and Nancy Nelson. Doreen Stratton is an HRC member. She's extremely active in her community, and she was the 2026 Bucks County Women's History Month Award recipient. As well, she's a historian, author, very funny, and much more. And Nancy Nelson is an activist for local history and racial justice. She's very active in her church, and her father, Randall Nelson, helped lead the integration of Fanny Chapman Pool, as well as she does many more things for her community. As an introduction, the Fanny Chapman Pool was opened in 1927 as a recreational space for the Doylestown community. Although it was meant to bring people together, the pool reflected segregation and racial inequality common during that period. African American residents often experienced discrimination and unequal treatment. Our primary focus for today is on how segregation impacted the local communities and how attitudes and opportunities have changed since. Although the Fanny Chapman Pool became an important recreational space in the Doylestown community, it was not equally welcoming to all residents. Black community members were often treated unfairly and denied access as compared to white residents. Racial stereotypes were commonly used to justify segregation, including common belief that Black community members would dirty the water. This caused many African Americans to feel isolated and excluded. Across the United States, public pools became major symbols of segregation and racial division, but Black African Americans continued to advocate for their rights and desegregation. Now we will be playing a small clip from the interview as an introduction.
That had an incident when some non-white people went to the pool, and it was such an awful mess that from what I remember, they had to shut the pool down altogether because the people of color who had said they wanted to go in there, they were denied, and it got a little heated with discussions.
Okay, just to give a little bit more background on why Fanny Chapman was created in the first place. The Fanny Chapman Pool was created by a man named William Mercer and his family in the 1920s, and they did this because, according to the Bucks County Herald, at that time, not many Doylestown families had swimming pools, and stories of children drowning in local streams and ponds and rivers were unfortunately commonplace in local newspapers. So the Mercers realized that learning to swim was a very important skill for children, so they created the Fanny Chapman Pool. But this is ironic because although the Fanny Chapman Pool did help many white children learn how to swim, it segregated against black children for many decades, and the community suffered as a result. So it was not living up to its promise. Now on to the overall impact of Fanny Chapman's segregation. So for the decades when the pool was segregated, black children suffered. They were isolated from the community swimming pool, which is a popular public place. And Doreen Stratton, who is here today, she recounted in an article called Segregation Summers 1958 that the race-based segregation caused her childhood self to, quote, pause in envy whenever a group of kiddos walked past our house carrying their bathing suits rolled up in a towel, either on their way to or coming from the pool. So obviously, being banned from a public place because of who you are caused children to feel rejected or isolated. And furthermore, as mentioned earlier by Ms. Stratton and also by Annika, black children were told that they were banned from Fanny Chapman and other pools because their presence would dirty the water. So this is obviously a disgusting thing to say to a child or anyone else, and these beliefs undoubtedly affected black children's sense of self-worth at the time, and the isolation from other children most likely worsened that effect. But aside from the psychological aspect, there were physical ones as well. So, as I've stated, the Fanny Chapman Pool was created to teach children how to swim in order to prevent drowning. However, for many decades, black children were entirely excluded from this vision, and as a result, many black people and other minorities grew up not knowing how to swim, which is extremely dangerous. According to the Fairmount Waterworks article, Pool, A Social History of Segregation, in Pennsylvania, black children have a 50% higher rate of accidental drowning than white children, and that statistic is today. That's remained unchanged for decades due to lingering problems stemming from pool segregation. Still, the eventual integration of Fanny Chapman Pool in 1958, which we'll elaborate on later, had a positive impact. As a result, over time, black children were able to participate in community events and learn the life-saving skill of swimming. And overall, as a long-term result of initiatives such as this one, there have been many extremely talented black Olympic swimming athletes, such as Enith Bergatha, who is up there, Simone Manuel, Cullen Jones, and Anthony Nesty. So although it's impossible to quantify the direct nationwide result of Fanny Chapman's integration, the movement that it was part of helped to give incredibly talented black people the chance to learn how to swim, which they might have not even gotten in past decades. And locally, of course, the effect over time of Fanny Chapman's desegregation was a decrease in isolation for black youth and the long overdue chance to learn how to swim, a life-saving skill that all children should be taught for safety's sake. So the goal of Fanny Chapman in the first place was finally extended to all.
By the time for us to be able, you're allowed to go to the pool. I was getting ready to go into 11th grade. That was the first summer when I was allowed to go into the pool, and that's how I learned how to swim, thank goodness. There was one section of beach which is now, I think they put it on the National Register. It was called Chicken Bone Beach. It was segregated to go on the beach too back then. So we would go to Chicken Bone Beach, and it was interesting. So for so many times, the lifeguards were going out there getting little black boys and girls out of the water because they didn't know how to swim. And even to this day, there are many people of color that don't know how to swim, and that's why it's really so good to see that the Olympics has opened up and you are seeing more people of color.
And the thing was, the pool was built so that children would learn how to swim. And even through Doreen and my experiences, my father was in the Kiwanis Club at the time in Doylestown. And he had asked could they fund the child? And it didn't matter what color you were. You could have been red, green, purple. It didn't matter. And they said, sure, we can do that. So that was another thing he put out. And he said, anyone that cannot afford to go, you know, please let us know, and we will pay for your membership. Mm-hmm. So all of this worked out for everybody's good. That, you know, that
as it should have been.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that was a winning thing for Doylestown Borough.
So pre-pool integration, ownership of the pool was private. It was a board of trustees established by William and Martha Mercer. And in 1958, the ownership of the board was transferred to public ownership of the Doylestown community. So Randall Nelson, Nancy's father, he owned a barbershop during this time, which was an informal gathering place for politicians during the daytime. Because of this, he was able to informally campaign to them, therefore allowing the membership to be changed, and anyone was allowed to swim and purchase memberships to the pool as they should be.
Moving forward post-integration, Randall Nelson approached the Doylestown Borough Council in 1957 requesting for the pool to be integrated, and as a result, in the summer of 1958, the pool was finally desegregated after 30 years since the pool opened. After years of watching the white children having fun at the pool, it was finally the black children's turn. The first day the pool opened, a group of black children went in together, including Miss Stratton and Miss Nelson. Rather than abandoning the facility following the integration, the community, especially the Mercer family, continued to pour resources into it. In 1959, just a year after integration, Mrs. Mercer donated additional pools, including the diving pool and the upper instructional pool. Over time, modernizing renovations took place in the 1970s, 1990s, and early 2010s, helping transform the facility into a cornerstone of Doylestown recreation. Now, did everyone support it, and what were people feeling? Unfortunately, there was still some racial tension at the time. For example, some white residents abandoned the pool for private clubs. But for the most part, there was no explosive public violence that took place. Doylestown transition stood out for being a relatively more peaceful compared to integration seen in other places. Beyond the pool itself, how did the segregation at Fanny Chapman reflect the broader atmosphere of Doylestown at the time? Were there any other places that felt off limits? In addition to the segregation at the pool, some private clubs wouldn't allow people of color to enter. For example, James Michener's wife, Mary Sabuswa, a Japanese American, wanted to take her to the Manticore, a club that was located on Oakland Avenue. They allowed Michener to enter, but wouldn't accept his wife due to her race. Michener did confront the Manticore regarding the racial issue. Also, there were some ethnic clubs at the time that denied people of color to join.
So moving forward, we've seen a large amount of change that was much needed from the postmodern era to today. As previously stated, Fanny Chapman was transferred from private owners to the borough in 1958, and we heard earlier that in 1954 the case Brown v. the Board of Education was taking place. But the legacy of desegregation didn't just end there, as in 1965 a pivotal act known as the Voting Rights Act was passed, which ensured the protection of Black voters around America. And in our community in 2010, the Borough of Human Relations Commission, which is previously talked about, was created, which is a modern day commission which attempts to prevent discriminatory acts in public service and housing and in society overall. So I think it's clear that modern day society has evolved greatly since a lot of these injustices and is actively working to prevent a lot of inequalities. But issues definitely still occur. So that takes me to our summary of what we should take away from this. I think it's important that we need to stress the discussion of a lot of these past injustices to new and old generations and not just bury it in the past.
mainly because we don't want history to be repeated. It's clear that a lot of these actions were horrible injustices to the children and the people that were affected by a lot of this desegregation. And if we're able to stress the importance of these topics to younger generations, we'll be able to help maybe erase some of the stigma, and even to older generations, to teach them on topics that they may not even have been aware of. So it was stressed to us during our interviews that education really is important in preventing a lot of action like this. And then finally, I think it's important to remember those who fought to create the society that we live in today through a lot of this desegregation of our town, mainly because the fact that we wouldn't be here today without the work of these brave people who stood up to fight for what was right when no one else would. And that brings us to our final interview.
I'm colored. I'm not one of those. I'm not like them. Not knowing, and of course, when you're in a family where you're the only black people, so you're not hearing an awful lot of black history or ancestry because you're living in this community. Everyone is a different color, and you just think, well, I'm colored, and that's it. We're on this blue marble here, and there's too much hatred going on. And it really, sometimes it starts when you're very young. So school is a good place for it to happen.
I feel the same way that, school is the place. Of course, everybody says home is the place. Parents should take, responsibility in teaching their children, which is true, because you can't put everything on the school. But it would be nice if they did history, and not just for Black History Month, just an ongoing session every now and then about the history of Black people in Bucks County, or mainly Bucks County, because that's what we talk about.
And supported us today. This concludes our presentation.
That just makes me so happy. You guys are amazing.
Wonderful.
What questions do we have for our lovely presenters? Yes, Jackie.
How many students or people of color, children of color, now belong to Fanny Chapman?
And do we have statistics?
I don't think we have statistics, but more than segregation years, which is a good.
And more than zero, that's, yeah.
But
Do you have statistics on that?
Not specifically, it's not something we track, but we do have a number of families that are non-Caucasian that come to Poorway, and we extend a lot of financial assistance to families that need it.
Awesome.
A lot of those are families of color, so we don't track it specifically, it's not part of the application. We accept anybody who wants to be part of it.
Even better. Who else? Yes.
What research did you find why it was decided that the pool was going to go from private ownership into a community pool?
for that,
Could you repeat the question?
The question is, why were the Mercers interested, or were they not interested, in having the pool transition from private ownership to public ownership?
thank you. As stated before, I think Caitlin said it in her slide, there was a Mercer that donated numerous pools to Fanny Chapman, so they did definitely still support it even after it was integrated. So there was definitely no force needed, I'm assuming, and I think they just realized that it was time and the world was changing and they needed to as well.
I think there was something regarding how the trust was written as well that was a factor, but I don't remember the details on that. they didn't have children, so that kind of, right, so it's got to go somewhere, right? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. What motivated you to take on this project?
Would the fearless leader, Abby, like to answer that question? Maybe talk about your recruitment efforts?
Honestly, everyone that worked on this project is absolutely amazing. I came up to everyone and I told them that this is going to be extracurricular. It's going to be extra time consuming. It's SAT season, but everyone, once they heard the idea, was so willing to do it. And I think it just shows everyone's characteristics that they're willing to do something, even if, you know, there's not a ton of benefits, but just because it betters the community.
I just want to thank Abby, who did an amazing job like leading us and guiding us through the research project process and supporting us through the whole thing. She's truly like an amazing person, an amazing leader, and so well spoken. So, thank you. Woo!
So it's safe to say that you're all interested in doing this kind of work, having this type of understanding about your community. That's why you're interested. Man, that's cool. Frida.
I just wonder if you think you might want to do something. Did this spark any interest in you maybe when you're going into your senior year? Yeah. Or college, anything like that? Did it just kind of bring out something?
How does this inspire you guys?
This inspires me a lot. I really care about like my community and everything, and being able to advocate for people and I think talking about history is so important because, like we talked about in our presentation, it's the past and history can repeat itself so often. So we need to stay educated about what's going on, especially in times like these where we have a chaotic administration. We need to know our past so we can be more prepared for our future. And this definitely inspired me a lot. I'm going to go to college for political science. So, yeah.
I came into this thinking I want to be a biologist and came out thinking I want to be a lawyer, so.
You're gonna be a good lawyer. Any more questions? Yes. Can I introduce you?
Sure, if you want, yeah.
I want to introduce Chris here because he was an amazing partner in this project. Chris is the supervisor of social studies for the Central Bucks School District, and he helped us make this project public and available for all high school students, which was really helpful.
Thanks. Can I see a show of hands? How many of you are or have been a member at Fanny Chapman before? Okay. I'm curious, as you've been talking with people about this project, how did people respond when you told them that Fanny Chapman was at one point segregated? Friends, parents, people in the neighborhood. What was their reaction to that fact?
I think for me, when I was talking to people I knew about it, a lot of them had no idea that something like this had occurred in the community. I mean, it's not something that's like discussed, or when you think of a lot of like institutions in town, there's so much history behind them that we just like don't know. So a lot of them were really shocked when they found out that like events had occurred here that were so like unjust, and people had faced this kind of a discrimination in our own town.
Yeah, I had a similar experience as Maya. When I was talking to my parents about the project that Abby so kindly let us do, they were very surprised about what happened at Fanny Chapman because it was so unexpected. So they were actually also interested in researching about what happened with me as well, which was a great help.
Just as the others said, this was a very surprising fact, especially after conducting my research. It took 30 years for them to desegregate it. That was extremely surprising. That's a long time. 30 years of injustice. I'm just glad that everything's desegregated, and yeah, just.
Amazing. I worked at Fanny Chapman for 4 years. I swam there my whole life. I'm a member there for years. I had no idea. It never even crossed my mind. In Doylestown, how's that possible? I was wrong. Yes.
I'm Nancy Nelson. Thank you. I have friends that I went to school with, played with, had, parties with. They just now, recently, I mean, we're talking 2024, to find out that I was not allowed to go to Fanny Chapman. They said, we had no idea this was going on. And I said, I know. I said, people did realize that, didn't realize that this was the type of thing. But the funny part of this whole story of integration, segregation, my mother was a school nurse, and she also joined Fanny Chapman. And at 5 o'clock, the whistle blew, all the kids were out. My mother would stay, and my two sisters and I would be happy because we could stay and you kids can't. And so, so it got to the point where they would ask us, do you think your mom would let us stay with her and she could be the adult, and keep an eye on us? So we said, well, we'll check with her. So we did, and she said, sure. So there were times when there were maybe 2 or 3 kids that stayed later, but then it got to be maybe 10, and it was almost like the pool wasn't closed at all. But, once everything got adjusted and everybody was adjusted, it worked out fine. There were some kids that, some African-American kids that my father had asked their parents if they could, come or would they like to. And there might have been about 5 families that just said no, they were afraid. So, so it was the Strattons and the Nelsons that swam. And we had a good time, just like everybody else.
So why was it that your mom was staying late? Was she like the nurse on staff there?
Practically, she nursed all over the place. Our summers off, she was even,
Yeah.
But she was a school nurse. So even at Berkeley playground, somebody got hurt.
She was the one.
So, but she joined Fanny Chapman, and they had adult swim.
So after 5 was adult swim?
After 5,
Okay.
the kids had to leave.
Unless you had an adult. I get it, okay. I'm with you now. Maybe a couple more questions. Yes, Jackie. Who, by the way, is from the Doylestown Township HRC along with Steve here.
I will have to make a statement. The Strattons and the Nelsons are very high profile families of color within the township. When my family moved here, my parents bought land from Lale Lane in 1959. When my father attempted to register my sister, my brother, and I, he was made to feel very unwelcome at Fanny Chapman. My father was made to feel that his family would not, in fact, be safe. I am 75 years old. I am, not yet, another month or so. This lady has been my friend since 7th grade, and as a swimmer at Fanny Chapman, had no idea of this had happened to my family. The legacy for me is that I learned to swim as an adult when I entered college. I taught my children how to swim, knowing how important that it was. The legacy that is left for me, and as I said, I grew up on what is now Lale Lane. I knew Lale Lane. I gardened with Lale Lane. Back then it was RD1 Doylestown. The legacy for me is that every year Fanny Chapman has a swim where they allow people to bring their dogs. I do not bring my dog. And I love my dog dearly. My feeling today, at my age, is that Fanny Chapman was off limits to me, and I will not bring my dog to Fanny Chapman to swim because I was not good enough to swim at Fanny Chapman. And I grew up with that. And I had friends who swam at Fanny Chapman, and they never knew what it was not to be able to do that. So 1958 is all well and good. It is 2026. My dog has not ever been to Fanny Chapman Pool. and neither have I nor my children.
It's powerful, Jackie. Thank you. One last question for our kids. Well, I just want to thank them one more time. What they took on was extra. It was not required of them. They did it because they were interested in being good citizens. They were interested in other people. They were interested in love, in loving their neighbor. And for that, I am touched by the virtue and the excellence you guys display as students and as citizens of our community. And on behalf of the borough, I just really want to say thank you.